The emergency lights of the crashed scout ship flickered against the ice walls of the cave, casting long shadows that danced like wraiths. Burok pressed his back against the cold stone, his breath misting in the frigid air of the uncharted moon. His daughter's photograph, creased and worn, rested against his chest pocket, a talisman he touched whenever fear threatened to overwhelm him. He was just a maintenance engineer, a father of a 6-year-old girl waiting for him 3 star systems away. He wasn't supposed to be here, trapped on this frozen hell with her. Melissa, the dragon empress of the draconian sovereignty, stood near the cave entrance. Even injured, even with her iridescent scales dulled by frost and one wing hanging at an awkward angle, she radiated an otherworldly majesty. Her kind had conquered 17 star systems. They'd ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years before humanity even discovered fire. And now she was terrified. "The Krethian hunters will find us by dawn," Melissa said, her voice usually commanding enough to make admirals tremble barely above a whisper. Her reptilian eyes, golden and ancient, fixed on the darkness beyond the cave. "They tracked by heat signature. We cannot outrun them in my condition." Burok pulled the thermal blanket from his survival kit, the only one that had survived the crash. It was standard human military issue, designed to mask heat signatures. "Designed for one person. We share it," he said simply, spreading it across the cave floor. Melissa turned to him, her expression unreadable. In draconian culture, proximity was intimacy. Touch was sacred. For an empress to share space with anyone outside her bloodline was unthinkable. "You would offer this to me?" she asked. "Your enemy?" "You're not my enemy right now," Burok replied, settling onto the cold ground. "Right now, you're just someone who needs help. Besides, my daughter would be disappointed if I let someone freeze to death just because they had scales." Something flickered across Melissa's face: surprise, perhaps, or the draconian equivalent of amusement. She moved toward him, her movements careful, almost hesitant. The Empress who had ordered the siege of New Terra, who had personally led fleets into battle, now approached a human maintenance worker as if he might bite. "Can I?" she started, her voice smaller than he'd ever heard it. "Can I hide under your blanket?" Burok lifted the edge in invitation. What the Draconians had never understood about humans, what had baffled them throughout the war, was this: humans bonded, not through pheromones or telepathic links or ancient blood oaths, but through something simpler and infinitely more stubborn: compassion, the ability to see suffering and respond to it, even in the face of logic, even in the face of danger. Melissa settled beside him, and Burok draped the blanket over them both. Her body temperature was higher than his, and within minutes, the space beneath the thermal covering became almost comfortable. She folded her injured wing carefully against her back. "In 3,000 years," she said quietly, "I have never been this close to another being who was not draconian. Your scent is ... strange, warm, like burning wood, and something sweet. Coffee and fear sweat, probably," Burok said, with a tired smile. "Sorry about that." "No." Melissa's head tilted in that bird-like way of her species. "It is not unpleasant. It is ... alive." They sat in silence for a time, listening to the howling wind outside. Somewhere in the darkness, the Krethian hunters searched for their mercenaries hired by a third party, hoping both the Empire and humanity would tear each other apart. "Why do you fight?" Melissa asked suddenly. "Your species is young. Your technology primitive compared to ours. You should have surrendered after the first engagement. Instead, you resist. You endure losses that would break any other species. Why?" Burok pulled out the photograph of his daughter, dark curls, missing front tooth, holding a stuffed rabbit nearly as big as she was. Melissa's eyes fixed on it. "Her name is Elif," Burok said. "She's 6. She likes to draw pictures of spaceships and wants to be a pilot someday. Every night before bed, she makes me promise I'll come home." He looked at Melissa. "That's why we fight. Not for territory or resources or glory. We fight because we have promises to keep. Because somewhere, people are waiting for us to come home." Melissa was quiet for a long moment. "We Draconians fight for honor," she finally said. "For the glory of the Empire. For dominance." Her voice grew softer. "I commanded the destruction of your colony on Kepler 442, 3,000 human souls. I told myself it was necessary, strategic. And now I am under a blanket with one of those I tried to destroy, and he is keeping me alive." She turned her golden eyes to him. "Your species baffles me, Burok of humanity. You should hate me." "I would hate me." "Oh, I'm not thrilled about the colony thing," Burok admitted. "But right now, in this moment, you're not the Dragon Empress. You're just Melissa. Someone who's scared and hurt and trying to survive. I know how that feels." The night wore on. They took turns sleeping, keeping watch. Melissa told him about the homeworld he'd never see. about cities that floated on thermal currents and libraries carved into crystal mountains. Burok told her about Earth's oceans and forests, about his late wife and how Elef had her mother's laugh at dawn. The Krethian hunters passed within meters of their cave, heat sensors sweeping the area. Under the thermal blanket, Burok and Melissa held perfectly still, her clawed hand accidentally clutching his arm. The hunters moved on. When the rescue ships arrived, both human and draconian, their weapons trained on each other across the frozen wasteland, Melissa emerged from the cave first. She stood at her full height, wings spread despite the pain, every inch the Empress once more. "This human," she declared, her voice carrying across the ice, "is under my personal protection. Anyone who harms him answers to me." Burok stepped out beside her, and for a moment, the galaxy held its breath. The war didn't end that day, but something shifted. The Dragon Empress who had never shown mercy began to ask different questions. The human engineer who just wanted to go home became an unlikely ambassador because sometimes survival requires more than strength or technology. Sometimes it requires the courage to share a blanket with your enemy and remember that beneath scales or skin, everyone is just trying to make it through the night. Burok made it home to Elefie. He had a promise to keep, and in the crystal palace of the draconian homeworld, an Empress kept a creased photograph of a little girl with dark curls, a reminder that humanity's true strength was never in their weapons, that it was in their stubborn, illogical, beautiful refusal to stop being human.